and thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. This is your host, Lauren, and I'm joined today by Brett Holzhauer, a self-proclaimed personal finance nerd. He currently works at M1, where he is the content marketing manager. Before that, he was a personal finance reporter at CNBC and Forbes. Along the way, he has been on his own financial journey. He successfully paid off $80,000 in student loan debt while buying his first home in South Florida in 2022. Just recently completed his first investment property deal in September of 2023. When he isn't money nerding, he's watching college football or getting a tan at the beach. Thanks for joining me, Brett.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. I'm really stoked. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey to say the least, and I'm turning 30 next month, so I've definitely hit some financial landmarks, but I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah. So our goal for today is make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a big part of adulting. So today, Brett, we're going to talk about this first real estate deal. That's pretty soon. So you buy your first house in 2022, and then you're doing your first real estate deal in 2023. Like, that seems pretty quick.
Yeah, so it kind of was the perfect storm. So just to get right into it, I purchased at the 11th hour in South Florida. So this was February of 2022. I was able to lock in a pretty solid interest rate, and property prices kind of have skyrocketed over the last few years here. And then my grandfather owned land in Missouri and was approached by some investors that wanted to purchase it. Some of the prices weren't so great, but he thought, hey, I'm going to, throw this land on the market, see what happens. Sure enough, an investor came along, wanted to pay a fair price, and decided to sell it off. And he said, hey, do you want to go partners on an investment property in this small town in Missouri? And I said, sure, I've got some extra cash. Like, let's, look in the market and see what's out there. So we ended up, we looked at like 15 houses in one day, and we purchased a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, single family home for $190,000. And luckily, with my grandfather's 1031 exchange, I was able to go into the deal with no money down. And we split it 3 ways. So grandma owns a third, grandpa owns a third, I own a third. And it's just a way for me to get my toes wet with real estate investing. Wasn't the biggest splash into it, but I had some money sitting and wanted to get in the game. So we just put our tenant in this past weekend, and we're collecting about $1,500 a month. So it's not a bad deal, not the world's greatest, but I think it's a good first step.
Absolutely. Not every deal has to be a home run. Getting back to your primary home in South Florida, can you just tell us like how much that was, what kind of loan you got, what you put down, what the interest rate was, some of those numbers?
Yeah. So I purchased a 2-2 townhome. Purchase price was $400,000. I got a 3.625 interest rate, put 5% down, conventional, was able to get approved on my own. And, my monthly payment's like $1,800 a month, and crazy enough, it's appreciated like 20 to 25%. And I've done like barely anything to it. So this was definitely a home run. Thinking about maybe renting it out and renting a place from a friend, trying to figure out what those numbers look like. But again, my primary residence is the home run. This first deal, I would say, is more like a double than anything. And so I'm looking to kind of hit more doubles, in a more affordable market, because as you know, I mean, South Florida is just, it's crazy expensive now, given the cost of living here. So definitely looking to take my money maybe elsewhere in Florida, or out of state, and continue investing in Missouri.
Got it. So why did you want to invest in real estate at all?
Number one, I think it's interesting. Number two, the tax write-offs I think are an excellent opportunity. And truthfully, this is like a sentimental thing, like doing something with my grandfather. He's like one of my best friends. Like, he's a mentor to me. And fun fact, even though he's in his 70s, when my grandparents had met, my grandmother already owned her house. So this was technically his very first home purchase ever. And he's in his 70s. And so he was asking like a trillion questions. I'm like, oh, grandpa, oh my gosh, like, you just stop. But again, I gave him a lot of grace, and it's just something cool to do with family. But I will say, going into business with family can always be a weird thing. Again, it can get real dicey real fast. So we've been very transparent, like signing documents like together, making sure all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted. So that part has been pretty seamless. And yeah, it's been a good experience so far. I'm sure there's going to be headaches along the way, but it's just a cool thing to do, along with someone that I value so much in my life.
Yeah, that's incredible. I wish, man, my grandfathers are both gone now for over 10 years. So, definitely wish I could do that. Still have my grandmas though, so I'm definitely savoring my time with them nowadays.
So have you ever invested with family before? Have you ever done business with family?
It's a good question. I have not. My only partner thus far has been my husband, and that
Okay.
that has enough challenges, in my opinion. Um, at one point, I was under contract on my 6 unit apartment building with my parents, and
Okay.
like we just sort of couldn't agree on the numbers. Like, and I don't blame my parents for that. I don't think they were sort of like, we'll bring this much, and then you'll pay us back this much, and you'll manage it the whole entire time we own it. And it didn't feel like, I just felt like they weren't valuing, especially for short-term rentals. I
Right.
didn't feel like they were valuing the property management side of things quite enough. And like, we're fine, like we just sort of decided we weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the drawing board. Was able to raise the rent on the one side of my duplex, get this girl paying that wasn't paying through some of COVID, redid the roof, tented it for termites, and then was able to 1031 that duplex.
Got
So I
it.
made that. We got time to make the duplex. Like somehow this 6 unit apartment building, which is a home run by the way, was on the market this whole time. It's just in a really small town, and I just happen to have an asymmetrical advantage in this small town because my uncle is a handyman there. So
Gotcha.
so he's able to kind of keep an eye on it for me. And then we just basically were able to do the 1031 exchange of the duplex into the 6 unit building, and just did it without my parents. And like, it's funny, my mom comes up and helps and everything, and it is what it is. It just didn't work, and like totally normal fit, like no change in family dynamics whatsoever. But it's
Yeah.
definitely, there would have been had we done the deal, I think.
And I think there's a lot of value in like investing in places where you already have built relationships and family, because again, we're kind of equidistant. So I'm in South Florida, my grandfather's in Los Angeles, and then it's kind of like right in the middle of the country. And so we're not going to go see the house on a daily, monthly, or probably even yearly basis. So we do have a property manager that is a family friend of a friend. And with it being such a small town, everyone kind of respects one another. My grandfather's sister was a former politician in the state of Missouri, so she's very well known. So I felt comfortable going into a place that I'm not super familiar with and throwing some money, into this community. And there's a large university there. It's spitting distance from an elementary school, so it's perfect for a family. And again, it was just kind of the perfect storm. But I think one of the interesting learning lessons for me, seeing the purchase price versus the selling price of this piece of land in Missouri, it really didn't make a lot of money. Like, I mean, it's just dirt. It just sits there. It didn't really do much. I think the ARR was like 3 or 4%. So if my grandfather would have just put money in the S&P 500, he would have made more money.
Yeah.
Everything works out for a reason, and it was the perfect storm. So I'm excited to understand now what the daily, weekly, monthly, looks like. And our property manager seems to be excellent. So hopefully I never have to hear anything. And I just kind of, and I hate this phrase, but get a passive check every month.
Yeah, I would definitely say long-term rentals are certainly more passive than short-term rentals in most cases. So I do get jealous of people that have a bunch of long-term rentals. So in our house money media, we have a personal finance course. We launched it, I don't know, a few weeks ago or what have you. And we talk about real estate investing, obviously, and we talk about land investing. And that's one of the things. Buying land is speculative a little bit. I mean, it's investing, but it's also a little bit of speculation. There's holding costs in terms of taxes, and if you have to mow it or there's any other upkeep. There are ways to make money on land. I learned you can like rent it to people that have bees. You can rent it to people that have cows to go eat there. You could do lumber, farming and harvesting and stuff. So there are ways to make money on land, but it's definitely not something I'm particularly interested in terms of owning a bunch of land. I own
Yeah,
one empty lot, but we have people parking it.
yeah, it seems to be more hassle than it's worth. Again, the very little that I know of it, I'm sure people make tons of money doing it. But for this specific piece of land that was in a residential neighborhood, couldn't have any farming. You couldn't make it a commercial property. It was, you buy this piece of dirt to build a house on it. So if there's no house, it's not really much to do. So again, he got approached by an investor. We kind of started having conversations and figuring out the numbers. And I appreciated that my grandfather was entrusting me to kind of like figure out over the last 20 years how much money has decreased in value, like what would make sense to make money on
Mhm.
this thing to eventually do that 1031 exchange. And it was a very seamless process, like extremely seamless. But the interesting part is, although I was involved in the deal, my grandparents essentially kept me off the name or off of all the documents because I was kind of just like a side investor. But
Yeah.
now that I have a promissory note with my grandfather and all the proper documents, now my name is officially on the deed. So it's exciting to know that, like, wow, my name's attached to like a property that I don't physically stay in. Like, it's crazy enough to purchase a house in today's world, and then to have like your first investment property is like, whoa, like this is nuts. And then I'm sure I'm gonna have the same feeling with the second one and hopefully the third one. So yeah, it's kind of, it is a little overwhelming at times, like, oh my gosh, I own something that I can't see, but
Yeah.
that monthly check is going to be pretty nice.
So don't take this question the wrong way.
Sure.
You're not bringing money to the deal. What are
Mhm.
you there for? Why
So
does your
what am I
grandpa want
there
to do
for?
business with you?
So I have a personal line of credit on the side. So once the mortgage was secured and that first payment came, then I brought money to the table. So now I own the majority of the mortgage. My grandfather owes like 10 grand on it. So he's basically paid off for my grandparents, I should
Got it.
paid off for
Got it.
their 2/3. So the way to think about this deal, so it was 190 divided into threes. Their 2/3 is basically paid off. So they're going to be getting ballpark 900 to $1,000 a month, and their costs are essentially gone. For me, now I'm servicing the loan, and once the loan is officially paid off, then we're just going to split it into those, 2/3 bucket, 1/3 bucket. So it's a little kooky. It's a little different. It's not a traditional deal by any means, but like I was telling you offline, the main reason for this is, unfortunately, when my grandparents do pass on, they do want to leave something to me. And so this is really a tax advantaged way to kind of pass on that generational wealth. And they're super proud of it. I'm one of two grandkids. My grandfather's technically my step grandfather, so he didn't have kids of his own. So I'm like his child. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's really, this is a sentimental deal. Of course, there's money involved. But how we've kind of divided it up is that my grandfather was a construction teacher for all of his career. So he's like handling the building itself, the maintenance, the property management. I'm just the financier and the Excel person. So I pay the mortgage each month. I handle the money. I send my grandfather his dividend, I call it. So it's a very kooky, different deal. But hopefully the next step is to rip the money out of that house, go buy another, and go buy another. And I think it's really not about the money for me. It's about doing something really cool with my grandfather that I know is going to pay off for my grandparents now that they're both in retirement, and then also for me in the long term. But in the short term, it's not a humongous money maker for me.
I was asking you that question kind of facetiously because you cannot bring money to a deal and be incredibly valuable in the deal. I mean, if you're there just to give them the confidence to pull the trigger, that has a lot of value in and of itself. And then the way that you're speaking of where you have taken on most of the loan, that makes a lot of sense too. So
yeah, my grandparents essentially have zero liability in this deal. All the liability is on me in handling, again, the finances. And I mean, something as simple as like paying the mortgage. Like my grandfather does everything by mail. I said, Grandpa, don't even bother, I
right.
got it.
Yeah.
So it's those silly little things that I give my grandparents ease of mind. I'm going to take care of it. They can trust me, and I'm going to come through, I'm paying the bill each month. But then I also trust my grandfather, and he has the free time to, hey, a pipe broke. Hey, this broke. You can handle that. So it's divide and conquer.
So my grandmother, when I was growing up, she had 4 rentals plus her own primary home. And I'm one of 11 grandkids on that side. So I was doing the math. I'm like, this isn't really gonna work out. But anyways, so she's ended up selling them over time as part of
Uh-huh.
her retirement plan and taking some chunks. But I was like, dang, I couldn't have done a deal with my grandma. And your grandparents are in their 70s. Like my grandmas are 87, 88, 88, 91. So
Uh,
they're like way up there.
yeah.
So tell us a little more about the numbers. You said 190 purchase price. Obviously, some of the 1031 exchange money and went in there. You have most of the loan. Your grandparents have very little that they owe. Your rent's 1,500. What are you paying your property manager?
Yeah. So that's 10% right off the top for the property manager. So the deal was 190. My grandparents technically came in with 110-ish. So again, their liability is like 12 or 15 grand. It's very minor. This is the crappy part of the deal because interest rates suck right now.
Yep.
Our interest rate 7.125%, despite coming with a massive down payment and obviously, huge, great credit score, basically no liability for the bank. But this is where, again, it gets like the creative finance kind of comes in. So 2 years ago, went through a divorce myself. So I had to get a personal line of credit through my bank to kind of refinance some debt and kind of restructure things. But I was able to get $60,000 2 years ago. So I've been paying this down. And my maturity date, if you will. So let me back up for a second. It's kind of kooky. So it's a 7-year personal line of credit. The first 2 years, it's like a credit card. You can use as much or as little as you want. My 2 years was coming up. It just passed in August. And so I had $40,000 of play money. I'm like, it was at 2.25%. So it's basically money. So I said, I have to use this money for something like this. Mm-hmm. I was just going to put it all in my taxable brokerage. Like if nothing came up,
yep.
This deal came up and I said, okay, this is perfect. I'm going to take this $40,000. I'm going to throw it at this house and then obviously assume the mortgage, most of the mortgage. So it's kind of a balance of 7.125% in the mortgage and then 2.25% in my personal line of credit. So it kind of nets out to like a 4.5-ish, which again, I want to pay down that 7% as fast as possible. That's kind of like my number one priority right now. Some people feel like, oh, just pay down real estate as slow as possible. But at 7.125%, I need to get that thing off my balance sheet. So my goal is to pay my portion off by the end of next year. That's my goal, or by the end of 2025. So again, there's a little bit of creative finance involved. Interest rates are terrible right now. So you kind of do have to get creative to kind of make it work. But again, our mortgage payment is $600. Our net rent coming in is like $1,350-ish. So, I mean, it's still a solid spread. And then obviously once we pay the house off, it's going to be even better. But yeah, it's, again, very creative finance, very kooky, very different. And the deals coming forward after this are going to be a little bit more on the traditional side. Just crossing my fingers that interest rates go down. I think all of us are.
Yeah. So you bought your first rental property in 2023. Has anybody looked at you like, what the hell are you doing? This is obviously a terrible time to be buying real estate.
I think, it's funny. Of course, family always has their 2 cents and their interjections. People are like, why are you buying in Missouri? Like, housing's just expensive right now. Housing's expensive everywhere, which there is truth to that. But again, my family being from Southern California, everything that has a roof is $1 million. And then everything in South Florida that has a roof is $600,000. People don't realize that there is affordable housing in this country. I say that very gently. There are affordable places to live. It's just not in South Beach or LA or New York. And so I've decided to take my money, unfortunately, to a place that is more relatively affordable, that isn't so high pressure, that, $1,500 a month, even if you're in a financial bind, you can find a way to make that rent work. And so it just made sense. And we have relationships there. So, do interest rates suck right now? Yes, but I'm not worried about the short term. This is a long-term play. I'd love to hold this house for 20 plus years in a perfect world. So I never really worried about, oh, this is such a bad time. Who knows what's going to happen. It's the same way with the stock market. I primarily do stock market investing rather than real estate. I like real estate. I love the stock market, and that's just a pure preference. And so again, the old adage of time in the market beats timing the market. And so I'm just going to hold this piece of real estate, collect 15, hopefully 16, 1700 bucks a month, and just kind of sail it into the sunset. And when the time is right, we'll get rid of it. But I'm not worried about the day to day. That's just, I don't know. I'm barely turning 30. I've got a long time.
Yeah. So let's talk about the long-term goals then. Generally, what role do you see the stocks playing versus real estate in your retirement?
I think for me, I'm a bigger believer in the ability to invest in companies rather than a house. Obviously, we all need shelter. I think housing is in a very weird place in the United States right now. Obviously, the Gen X, not Gen Xers, what's the generation? Yeah, before Gen X, the baby boomers, like they're going to start unfortunately dying off. There's going to be a large glutton of real estate coming into the market. Millennials like you and I, we need housing, but there's this weird dynamic going on. And so I don't see it as really a large part of my retirement. I would rather have all stocks, truthfully. I like it more. It's less hassle. But again, personal preference. Like I would love to have 4 or 5 doors in a perfect world, but ideally I'd like to have one door and just have a huge but again, that's just me. I'm not saying that's the right way, but it's a nerding out thing. Like I watch CNBC on repeat. It's just a personal thing, but real estate is necessary to build wealth. You can't argue that. The tax write-offs, it just makes sense.
And
But
the leverage, right? The
and
leveraged growth
absolutely,
is awesome.
absolutely. My mom's made a ton of money in real estate, and that's a podcast for another day, but it's a necessary, I don't want to say necessary evil, but it is necessary to build wealth. I'd love to live in my car and just put all my money in real estate, but I'm trying to get married, so that's not the best way to go about it.
So a lot of people that are into real estate that I know are super into real estate. Like they won't invest in anything else. And I think how it starts is they invest in stocks, they get their 401k, they get their IRA, and then they find a real estate deal and they're like, all right, I need all that money to buy this real estate deal. So I think that's kind of how it goes. I think I've said this before in the podcast, actually, I'm sure I have, where our net worth is about 30% in stocks. So we do have, and then it's about 50% real estate and then 20% other stuff. So, we do have, I think, a good bit of stocks, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's for me, some people look at like 401ks and IRAs as like a means to an end to eventually invest in real estate. For me, if I put $1 in those accounts, I kind of just say bye, see you when I'm 60. Like
Yep.
it's
Same.
just unless the world is melting and I'm in a dire situation, I'm never touching that money. Although I will say, so I have like a little play account, like brokerage has like 10 grand in it. I've legitimately thought about selling it off just to pay down this mortgage because I'm locking in an effective 7.125% rate of return. So I have I will say Dave Ramsey's been a little bit in my ear, just a little bit, but as a single person and the economy's in a very weird place, there's definitely peace of mind of being, essentially debt free. And ideally, again, by the end of next year, I want to have this piece of property paid off, my line of credit paid off, and then my car is almost paid off, and just have my primary house as my singular piece of debt. Dave Ramsey's been in my ear. I don't know why. It's pretty annoying, but
that's a sub 4% on your primary though. You're not going to go full Dave Ramsey and pay that off.
Oh no, 3.6. No way. I'm holding this thing until I croak. There's no way I'm gonna pay this thing off. Ideally, even currently there's a nice spread on my house between the current mortgage and the current market rent, and so I've legitimately thought about just moving in with a friend and just renting a room, and just bringing my cost of living all the way down. And being a homeowner times 2 now, like there is, especially in this market, there is value in renting. Absolutely, if you can keep it low, there is value in renting. And this notion that renting's throwing money away, I personally don't believe it. But if you're renting a 1-bedroom penthouse for $6,000 a month, then you probably are. But if I go rent a room from a friend for $1,200 a month, and put a tenant in my current house, I think there's a lot of value in that, especially when you're young and don't have kids and don't have those liabilities.
I like that too, because you still have the house, like you still have the townhouse. You can move back in if your life changes.
And that's exactly it. I could leave for a year, kick my tenants out, and rinse and repeat. So it's been something I've been kind of kicking around, but for right now, I'm enjoying the fact that I have a investment property before I turn 30, which a lot of people can't say. That's only a pipe dream for them. So I'm extremely grateful for it. I'm extremely grateful for my grandparents, allowing me to get into this deal, and hopefully, just expanding on it. I think for me, again, real estate is a means to an end. I don't overly enjoy it. It is kind of cool, but I just want to bury more money in stocks and keep paying down my debt and eventually get to a point where I could choose not to work. That's the goal.
We'll see how you feel about real estate in a year or two.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to have that conversation.
Yeah, a year from now, I could say, oh my gosh, like this rental experience has been so nice. November 1st, call me because I get my first rental check then, and then I might fall in love with it. So, but yeah, up until this point, it's just been work and phone calls and paperwork and all this stuff. So November 1st, the love affair might change.
Okay, so this comes out November 14th. So you'll have already gotten your rent check by then. And you're
Yes,
gonna
I
be
will
so
DM you and let you know.
there we go. So is there anything else you'd like to add, Brett, before we wrap up?
I think investing for the future, however you want to do it, is it really is up to you. There's no one right way to do it. I think everyone's looking for like, oh, this is the science, this is the answer, and there really isn't. As a personal finance counselor, I talk to people all the time about their financial situations, and I think investing in what you like is really important. If you're, I mean, may not be the best strategy, but if you love Tesla more than anything, like invest in it. If you love real estate more than anything, invest in it. Real estate, what have you. And doing what you like is very not talked about. It's no, this is the right way. You have to do it this way. And as long as you're comfortable and happy and risk averse, go for it. And it can be a little scary and a little intimidating, but get online, talk to people, DM people. And I think I will say the one thing that has helped me the most, and including our relationship, you know, DMing people and saying, hey, I love your show. I love what you're doing. Like, I have a question, and being authentic, people respond to that. And people like helping other people. So if you have a question about real estate, I've DM'd people randomly and gotten answers.
Yeah,
Going on YouTube, like just use your resources. Now more than ever, it's just so readily available. But it is scary, and that feeling of scariness is super valid because I still feel it all the time.
that's a good note to end on about the networking for sure. Can you tell people how to get in touch with you?
So hit me up on Twitter at Brett Holzhauer. I'm on M1. Again, this is a shameless plug. Feel free to invest on M1. We're a great broker dealer platform. And yeah, I'm around on the internet. Just hit me up. I love talking about money and stocks and points and miles and college football. So I'm always available.
Awesome. And you guys can follow me on Twitter at Adulting is Easy, on Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real. These videos are posted on YouTube at Adulting is Easy. If you like this episode, you may also like episode 26, where I interviewed Brett about his student loans. Also, I looked it up since we were talking about land. I did have Pete on to talk about land flipping in episode 116. So it's a way to make some money on land is by flipping it. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Brett and I have made adulting a little easier for you.